Scuderia Ferrari driver Charles Leclerc won on the streets of Monte Carlo in Monaco and finally broke the bad luck that seemed to follow him. If it weren't for the strong emotions accompanying the quest for victory after too many disappointments, it could be described as an easy win, really. His Ferrari SF-24 was unchallenged for the endless 76 laps after the restart, and the fact that there was no need for any more pit stops made life easier for the Maranello pit wall and the Monegasque driver, who only had to carefully manage the lead of the race. The most formidable opponent in the qualifying session was Oscar Piastri, who also had a 10-point aerodynamic load loss due to the incident with the Ferrari SF-24 car of Carlos Sainz at the start, which was insignificant when running 3 seconds off the real pace. But even in a true head-to-head battle, it would have been impossible for the McLaren MCL38 car of the Australian to stay in the slipstream. Charles Leclerc's pace management concealed a much higher potential. His SF-24 single-seater could have lapped up to 1 second faster than his personal best race time. The Monegasque could only fight to preserve the hard compound to the point of boredom as insurance against unforeseen events, and Brian Bozzi did not use diplomacy to convince him. Charles Leclerc's engineers had no reasonable reliability fears. The replacement with a fresher power unit for the qualifying session was purely precautionary, and in the race, Engine 1 was reinstalled to do its job. The current power units have reached a life cycle of 8,000 kilometers, and the pace at which the race was run eliminated any potential risk of technical issue. The restart eliminated the only strategic uncertainty due to possible undercuts. In the battle with McLaren, the only concern was not to allow a big gap against George Russell, Max Verstappen, and Lewis Hamilton to avoid giving Lando Norris the possibility of stopping to mount a set or brand new tires. Charles Leclerc dominated his anxiety, and Carlos Sainz played the team player role faithfully. The two Maranello drivers executed the established plan perfectly, and Oscar Piastri's race could only be a consequence. The chasing group consisted of Max Verstappen and the two Mercedes drivers, but the tire selection chosen negatively compared to the first start forced George Russell to maintain a Formula 2 race pace to save the softer compound and therefore fend off Max Verstappen. For the Dutchman and Red Bull, it was a difficult weekend. However, he can console himself by looking at Sergio Perez's disastrous qualifying performance, not to mention the collision with Kevin Magnussen, which destroyed an RB20 car. This means a damage of about 2 or 3 million as confirmed by Red Bull consultant Helmut Marko. Indeed, excluding the older power unit, it's said to amount to 2 million. This is a significant hit to the finances of the Austrian side, especially under the current regulation of the budget cap. A concerned source revealed that if Red Bull have more damage, they might have to abandon or postpone an upgrade at the end of the season. The Monaco Grand Prix must be considered an extreme race in terms of performance, which makes it legitimate to expect a quick reaction from Max Verstappen, and the Dutchman will most likely return to fighting for the race win in the next round of the 2024 Formula 1 season, the Canadian Grand Prix. The Monte Carlo weekend allowed Charles Leclerc to reflect, get emotional, and think beyond driving, feeling a sense of liberation 2 laps from the end when he could hardly see anything anymore due to the tears in his eyes. This experience is expected to help him grow as a driver. Ferrari team principal Frédéric Vasseur noted that the weekend marked a significant step forward for Charles Leclerc in terms of progress, and remained calm about the possibility of victory. Charles Leclerc had also promised to jump into the water, taking Fred with him. After the dives, the celebration continued late into the night, with the entire Maranello team invited to stay up and celebrate. Fred Vasseur himself did not miss out on the celebrations and allowed an exception to the usual Monday schedule. Now let's also take a minute to focus on Carlos Sainz's race on the streets of Monte Carlo, especially considering the fact that several figures within Formula 1 expressed their disapproval after the Spaniard controversially benefited from being allowed to take his original third place on the grid for the Monaco restart after the early red flag. Carlos Sainz began the Monte Carlo race from third place again at the second start of the Monaco Grand Prix, despite stopping at the casino corner due to a puncture after the first start. After the violent crash between the Red Bull of Sergio Perez and the Haas cars of Nico Hülkenberg and Kevin Magnussen, race director Niels Wittich waited a long time before communicating the drivers' positions on the service monitors for the race restart. Initially, it was thought the grid would be arranged according to the order in which the cars passed the end of the first sector, the last checkpoint before the red flag was shown. This would have forced Carlos Sainz to restart from the last position. having parked his car outside the casino. After puncturing his right front tire, Carlos Sainz had stopped his car outside the escape road, then slowly returned to the pits after the race was halted. The Spaniard initially seemed resigned to restarting the race from the back, but then the restart order appeared on the monitors with car number 55 in third position. The reason became clear after the race. When the violent crash occurred on the climb to Massanet, the cars of Sergio Perez, Kevin Magnussen, and Nico Hülkenberg blocked the entire track. Behind them was only Zhou Guanyu, who immediately braked and stopped his Sauber car upon seeing the chaos. The Chinese driver was the only one among those still racing who did not cross the first sector line, located on the descent to Mirabeau, as he was blocked behind the damaged cars when the red flag appeared. In this case, the regulations are clear. Since not all drivers had crossed the line marking the end of the first sector, race control did not have a verified ranking before the red flag. Thus, they reverted to the starting order, which for Carlos Sainz meant he was repositioned in third place. After managing to slowly reach the pits and change his damaged set of tires, the Ferrari driver was able to restart the race from the position he had earned in the qualifying session on the streets of Monte Carlo, ultimately finishing in third place and making it a great double-podium finish for the Maranello team in Monaco. There is a lot of interest surrounding the upcoming rounds of the 2024 Formula One Championship, as Ferrari principal Frédéric Vasseur believes a shift in power dynamics is unfolding in the competition and suggests the Scuderia is in the mix to challenge Red Bull for the world title this season. The last 3 races have been a thrilling display of close competition, with the top drivers separated by mere tenths of a second in crucial moments. McLaren driver Lando Norris prevailed in the Miami Grand Prix, while the Briton finished hot on the heels of Max Verstappen in the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix at the Imola circuit. In Monaco last weekend, local hero Charles Leclerc delivered to Ferrari its second win of the season after his Maranello teammate Carlos Sainz secured the race victory at the Albert Park circuit in the Australian Grand Prix. While Red Bull and Max Verstappen remain clear favorites for the championship, Ferrari and a resurgent McLaren team have thrown down the gauntlet. While acknowledging Ferrari's progress and the shift in dynamics at the head of the field, team boss Frédéric Vasseur cautioned that the top teams will likely trade blows throughout the 2024 Formula One season, keeping the championship battle wide open until the final checkered flag. The French manager noted that the 3 teams were capable of fighting for pole positions and wins, expressing excitement and hope that this competitive scenario would continue until the season's end. He mentioned that depending on the track, Red Bull, Ferrari, or McLaren might have an advantage. Fred Vasseur also emphasized the need for the Maranello team to be opportunistic, contrasting it with last year when they lost too many points during the season. He highlighted that they had made significant progress in this regard and predicted a tight fight until the end of the season. Now the focus shifts to the Canadian Grand Prix, where hopes to further reduce the gap in the Drivers' and Constructors' Championship against Max Verstappen and Red Bull.